Tales from the wild. Stories from the heart. A journey into the mind and soul of fired-up business professionals where they share their vision for the future. And hear from a different non-profit organization every month as they create awareness of their goals and their needs. Dive into a world of untamed passion as we join our host, Shireen Buerta, for this month's episode of Friends from Wild Places.
Now that you're a certified grief companion and the founder of Living in Gratitude with TLC and Healing Hearts community, I thought, following your story now, you could share a little bit more about it and how it affects the community and how it helps and supports the community.
Sure. So when I first started, I was solely helping individuals just privately, one-on-one, which is still something that's really near and dear to my heart because I feel like that's where the real magic happens. And, I tell people all the time, it takes a lot of courage to ask for help. It takes a lot of courage to take that step, and because it's scary. And so I made it a point. Social media is a big thing and people are on social media. And so I wanted to just put myself out there and show others that I'm just a normal person. I'm a mom who lost a child. I'm a widow remarried, just to show hope, to show you can find joy again, you can live life again, and to just show that I'm human. I still miss my son, I miss my husband, I carry my grief with me always, but I also carry love with it. I also live a very fulfilling life. And so I set the intention probably 6 years ago to start just showing up every day, and I talk about grief openly. And because of that, I've created a space where others feel welcome to come into my social media space and share what's on their heart. And I give them that space. I ask questions almost every day about their experience or what they're going through. And I wanted to give people what others don't give them, everyone, our family and friends stop asking. And a lot of times it just comes from a place they don't know that we need that, or they're afraid they're going to make us sad if they bring up our loved one or they talk about them. And so I talk about that too. I talk about ways that you can support your friend or your family member that's suffered a loss, and how you can show up for them and be there for them. Because even though people say, let me know if you need anything, that's the go-to. I'm really sorry for your loss. Let me know if I can do anything to help you. We don't ask. And 9 times out of 10, we're not going to ask. And so I encourage people, just do it. Just do something, for them. And so I started doing this, as my profession. This is my job. This is my career. This is what I've dedicated my life to. So I still see clients one-on-one. Most of my work is done virtually. I do some things with funeral homes. I do in-person support circles where they invite members of the community in, and we just host a support circle. I do a lot of workshops. I like to give back and do a lot of free things. I'll host workshops, especially around the holidays, for helping those who are struggling during that time, because that can really bring out a lot of memories and a lot of painful things, or especially if it's someone's first holiday. So I like to hold space for that. I'll do, writing letters of serenity workshops. So just a lot of ways to give back, because my goal is to make grief support available to everyone, not just someone who has the financial ability to pay for one-on-one private services. So I have a lot of free resources inside of the Healing Hearts community. I have a self-guided on-demand course that's a priced so that anyone can have access to it. And I do a lot of free workshops, my one-on-one coaching. I have a monthly membership, my shared circle, which is it's only $22 a month, and we meet twice a month virtually. And then they also have access to online tools and a private space, kind of like a Facebook wall, but it's inside of the Healing Hearts community. And I started hosting grief retreats last year, which has been something I found to be absolutely magical. My very first one taught me so much about the importance of community and just those shared connections. And so that's something I see myself doing a lot more of in the future. So yeah, I feel like grief has really shaped my life and where I am today and who I am today. I truly live my life in gratitude. I know what it's like to suffer great loss. I don't take anything for granted. And I feel like I am living my life big. That's what I say. I live my life big for Tyler and I both, because I'm, living for two people. So it really is an honor when someone trusts me enough to sit with me and be vulnerable and open up and trust me with the most dearest parts of their heart and are okay with sharing that with me. So creating those safe spaces is just where my heart is at.
Yeah, Terri, every time we chat and hear, today on the podcast is just, I always just kind of resonate more with you and your story and your journey. And, the words that came to me today, it's kind of like, the gratitude through grief, right? Like, it's like you live your life every day when you get up, knowing that, there's somebody out there that needs to hear what you're going to say or read what you've written, or is going to be part of the community space that you have provided, whether it's workshops or in person or circles or whatever that forum is. But first of all, and having your two losses that you described, your husband and then Tyler, and then also I think from I would say from a funeral director perspective, it's also his passing, your son's passing, was not like due to an illness, which is another layer of grief. You know what I mean? Because people who have somebody that has illness, it's like people are, even though you're never prepared, but at least it's something that, you're living it day to day. Like, for example, people with children with cancer or, terminal illness or congenital things, but your situation, just having like having had your husband's loss, and then, with Tyler, with the accident, that's also another layer. But first of all, thank you just for, being open and sharing, your heart with us truly in the heart's journey. Can you shed some light though? Because I also want to bring to light briefly your interaction with the funeral home, because that I think is another layer for any of our funeral professionals listening out there, that you really did not, in my opinion, and I'm going to speak from the professional opinion, you did not get treated like you should have, like that or the support and the nurturing aspect that I don't think was given to you. So do you mind highlighting that a little bit, just from what you experienced from your viewpoint?
Sure, yeah, not at all. And that's something, as we've had many conversations about. So it is something that is also something I feel strongly needs to change. And I've seen a lot of change through meeting Dr. T. It's like I see what she pours into her students, and it's so refreshing, and it makes my heart so happy to see, because I didn't have the best experiences in planning either of the funerals. They both felt extremely transactional. And with my husband's funeral, that was the first time I'd ever done that. So I had nothing to compare it to. So I didn't know what the experience should look like. I only know what it did look like. And it felt cold. And, I was welcomed into this big room, and there was just a big table, and the funeral director sat at the head of the table, and we had a big book that we flipped through. And I just remember being overwhelmed with, it was like you go through this book and you're picking out all these things, and grief brain is a real thing. Like, we cannot focus. We cannot think about like the little details or really process thoughts. And so at the end of that, to say, okay, how are you going to pay for this? And not, there was never any niceties. There was never any, I know this is hard. I know you're going through a lot. Like, there was none of that. But so I walked away from that thinking, okay, this is what it is. And then 7 years later, when I lost my son, he was taken to the same funeral home. It was a local funeral home. It actually shared, I don't think there's probably somewhere related, shared our last name, but my first married name and Tyler's last name. And so going back there again, I just was expecting the same type of treatment. I didn't know what to expect, but I had the exact experience and then some. It was the same big table, the same man sitting at the head of it, the same book, but I recognized more things, and more things were sticking out to me. Like, one of the things sitting at the table was this upselling. I did sales for 29 and a half years. I recognized the upselling that was happening, and it was the vault. I'll never forget it. The way it was described to me, the vault that I had chosen, because I don't know anything about them. I'm relying on him as the professional. And he went on to tell me that the vault that I was choosing was not waterproof. And he was very descriptive about what that meant for my son, whose remains will be in the ground with getting damp and wet. And like, as a mom, absolutely, I can't do that. So, okay, give me which one is waterproof. That's the one that that's the one that I want. That's the one that I need. And so we did that. And then my husband and I took Tyler's clothes over one day. We had a meeting to take his clothes over, and the sheriff's department had offered, they were giving Tyler, he was only 17, but they were giving him a full honors funeral, and they'd given us a thin blue line sticker to put on his casket. And so we took that stuff over, and I was just curious. My son was super regimented, very socially awkward when it came to his peers. And the way he dressed was like, I knew what was in his wardrobe to a T, but I couldn't figure out what he was wearing. And it just kept like nagging at me. So I asked that day, what was he wearing? And he said, I said, can we see his clothes? And he was like, oh, no, no, you can't see them. That's like a biohazard or something. And I was like, okay, but can you just tell me what he was wearing? And he said, oh, he's wearing shorts and a tie-dye t-shirt. And I was like, what? Absolutely not. My son would never wear tie-dye. If he doesn't own tie-dye, he would never wear tie-dye. He wears polo shirts in every fashion, or he has, white undershirts. Never, it's not tie-dye. It is tie-dye. I know you don't think that that's what he would wear, but he was wearing a tie-dye shirt. And so then we became adamant. No, we need to see what he was wearing. So he had my husband sign a waiver, and he would not let me see the clothes, but he said he could take my husband to see them. So they leave, and they come back like 10 or 15 minutes later, and I hear them coming up the hallway. Like, it sounds like two people arguing, and they come in the room, and they were really arguing over, my husband said that it was, he walked in, he said, it wasn't tie-dye, Terri. He was wearing one of his white Hanes undershirts, and it had motor oil and antifreeze splattered all over it. So he just thought it was tie-dye. And the gentleman said it was not motor fuel and antifreeze. Like, really matter of fact, I don't even know what that was all about. I have no idea, but he was very adamant that it was not. And So we just let it go. And the next day were the prayers. We go an hour beforehand for us to see Tyler. We hadn't seen him yet. And my husband and I were standing up at the casket, and I was like stroking Tyler's hair. And I saw a little, gash on the side of his head where the seatbelt thing had hit his head. And it struck me. I said, I'm really surprised. I wonder if there's burns on his body from the oil and stuff from the car engine. That should have been hot. And I hear from behind me, it was not motor fuel. And I was like, are you? I turned around and there he was standing behind us. So I was like, oh my gosh, like, is this really happening? And I think the last thing that really stuck out to me with that experience was on the way out of the funeral home, the day of Tyler's funeral. I said the sheriff's department gave him like full honor, so they had their honor guard there, and they were carrying his casket out of the funeral home, and there was a car there assigned to my husband and I, and we were following behind it, and I felt someone tap me on my arm. And so I turned around, and it was a lady that worked there. And she's like, excuse me, Mrs. Chaplin, can I just get you to come over here to this table real quick? I need to get you to sign something. I'm like, but I want to keep up with my son. And she was like, no, I just need you to sign this really quick. And I had a really small life insurance policy through my employer. And they had this form that said I would give it to them when it came in, and they had forgotten to get me to sign it. And so she stopped me then. And those things just never left me. And then the more I talked to other people and I heard other experiences over the years, like, I didn't have that experience at all. Like, where were the warm fuzzies? Where was the compassion? And the more I learned about how to hold space for someone in grief, how to not invalidate their feelings by the way you speak to them and the things that you say to them. Like, how hard would it be to just change the way that you speak? How hard would it be to say, I know this is a lot, especially when it comes to paying. That same thing happened with my son. And they said, well, how are you planning to pay? And I was like, well, look, can we have a second? Like, we were not expecting this. And so we just need a minute to like talk about it. And there wasn't any just say, I completely understand, take all the time you need. Let me leave the room. Let me give you a few minutes. There was none of that. This man just sat right there at the table waiting for us to tell him how we were going to pay. And so those things led me to, I do have, I talk about it a lot, and I created an on-demand course that sits inside of Healing Hearts community that teaches compassionate care and compassionate communication skills to all professionals, including, I have one specific to funeral professionals because of my experiences, and then one that's just for anyone, nurses, doctors, hospice volunteers, anyone, teachers, that come in contact with someone who could be grieving, because I think a lot of times people don't mean to invoke harm. They don't want to invalidate what you're feeling, but they don't know any better. They haven't been taught, they haven't had the experience themselves. And also they get uncomfortable with it. When we don't understand something, we're uncomfortable with it. And when they're uncomfortable, the things that come out are just like not appropriate because they're uncomfortable, not because they want to be mean or they want to be rude. It's just they don't know any better. So my hope is that by putting this information out there, it can change. But I have met so many funeral professionals and Dr. T and listened to the way she speaks to her class. I've sat in her talking with new up and coming funeral professionals, and she instills all of that beautifully. So it's so lovely to see that is, the way things are and the way things are moving, in the direction of that.
I
Wow.
love
And
that.
Terry,
That's
every
amazing.
time I hear you say, and share, and I just think that, there's always ideas running through my head as far as like, what can we do next? What can I have Terry speak to on next? Or what group or what? Yeah, no, so I have like ideas are like flooding me right now, but we'll save that for a future conversation. But I just, really from our hearts to yours, I mean, to
Mm,
truly share, not only the grief from the loss of, like the passing of two people so important to you, compounded with the way your son passed, as far as, it wasn't an illness like your husband that you shared. And then having the layer of grief, not once, but twice, just from the actual interactions with funeral homes. I mean, there's just like compound grief, like from multi facets, from
mm,
what I see and I learn each time. But I
mm,
just have to say, I'm just, grateful that you have a voice, and, through Tyler, to keep, his legacy alive, your husband's
mm,
legacy alive, and to be able to, speak truly from the heart on that you were wronged by the profession. Like you truly, and you have, that is, doesn't matter what, however you, get your word out there. That is one area that no one can, they can't debate that. That's true,
mm.
and
Yeah.
I'll do my best from my point of view to share, have you come into our classes, because they need to hear it. And, when people go through school or go through their journey, go to work, choose this profession, they may not have the, you know, whatever that is, that the soft skills that either they're, they feel that they don't need them, but they do. They really need them,
Mhm.
So I will help you. I will help you get your, not that you need my help, Terry, but I really feel that it's important for me to really get your story out there, because I really think it needs to get heard. So,
Right.
I appreciate that. I appreciate your voice, and I appreciate you just recognizing, and for a long time I didn't speak about it. And sometimes I don't want anyone to feel like I'm criticizing them. And I like to say, like, if it, if the shoe fits, wear it. If I speak my truth, and in somewhere in the back of your mind you think, oh, I did something like that, like, just learn from it, do better next time. And if it doesn't apply to you, that's wonderful that it doesn't apply to you. But I've learned that I can speak my truth without worrying about someone feeling like I'm criticizing them, or if that makes sense. But
Yeah.
right.
yeah.
100%. That's amazing. And I think there's a lot of people that have experienced what you experienced, Terry, and they just didn't realize, hey, that's actually wrong. And people should be better. And by you sharing your story and saying, you know what, this actually shouldn't happen and they need to work on this, it also allows other people that went through the same experiences as you to go, oh, that happened to me too. Yes, I agree.
Mhm.
So I think from multi different perspectives, you're helping people. And with that said, I just want to pop in here with a little bit of a Buzzsprout ad. It's important that if Friends from Wild Places is a place to share stories from other business owners and professionals, it is a safe space to show support for other business owners and entrepreneurs all over the world. So it's not just you and me and all you listeners. It's really a time to lend a hand to create a safe space. This is what this podcast is all about. And so we feature nonprofits every month to try and make a difference and lend that helping hand that I was speaking to you about. Um, at the end of the day, if you have a message yourself that you want to share with the world, or maybe you think it'll just be fun to start your own talk show, podcasting is very easy, it's inexpensive, and it is a fun way to expand your reach online. So if you want to start your own podcast today, please follow the link in the show notes. This lets Buzzsprout know we sent you, and it does help support the show. But Buzzsprout is a great platform. We love it here at Friends from Wild Places, and Buzzsprout is passionate about helping you succeed. Tune in next week for part 3 of Friends from Wild Places.
You've been listening to Friends from Wild Places with Shireen Bueta. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast from the links to catch every episode and unleash your passion.